The ad was simple enough, tacked to the bulletin board at the local hardware store in Kalispell. Estate caretaker needed, remote Montana location, excellent pay, inquire within. I was between gigs, a handy enough guy with a truck and a willingness to work, so I called the number. The voice on the other end was clipped, professional, and straight to the point. Mr. Silas Blackwood. He owned an estate deep in the Flathead National Forest that he used as a summer retreat. He was heading overseas for an extended period and needed someone reliable to watch the place. The excellent pay part turned out to be genuinely excellent, more than enough to make me overlook the inherent weirdness of someone leaving a sprawling, isolated property in the hands of a stranger. He didn't ask for references, just a brief phone conversation and a promise to meet at the property. My gut, usually pretty good about these things, gave a little twitch, but the rent was due. The drive out was a nightmare. The paved road quickly dissolved into gravel, then into a barely maintained dirt track that wound deeper and deeper into the forest. Towering pines, thick with shadow even in the midday sun, pressed in from all sides. My phone signal died about 20 miles back, leaving me in a pocket of complete isolation. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. It was the kind of silence that hums, that prickles the skin, as if the very trees were holding their breath. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I rounded a bend and saw it. It wasn't a house. It was a compound, a massive dark wood structure almost fortress-like, nestled in a clearing that felt unnaturally bright after the oppressive forest. There were no manicured lawns, no cheerful flower beds, just a vast expanse of rough, untamed land. A high black iron fence, topped with menacing spikes, enclosed the entire property. A heavy rusted gate, clearly never opened, barred the main entrance. I pulled up to a smaller, more modern-looking gate to the side, operated by a keypad. Mr. Blackwood was waiting for me. He was a man out of time, dressed in a pristine dark suit despite the remote location. His face was gaunt, his eyes a startling, unsettling shade of blue, like chips of ice. He didn't offer a handshake, just a curt nod. "You made it," he said, his voice as sharp and precise as a scalpel. "Good." He gave me a brief tour. The interior of the main house was even more imposing than the exterior. Grand, but utterly devoid of warmth. Every surface gleamed, every piece of antique furniture was perfectly placed. Yet it felt sterile, like a museum dedicated to something long dead. There were no personal touches, no family photos, no signs of a life lived within those walls. Just vast, empty rooms filled with an eerie quiet. He showed me the security system, a complex array of cameras, motion sensors, and alarms that covered every inch of the property. "I want to be clear," he said, his voice dropping. "This estate is to remain undisturbed. You are to monitor the cameras, ensure no one enters, and report anything unusual immediately." He pointed to a satellite phone in the master bedroom. "This is your only means of contact with the outside world. Use it only for emergencies concerning the property." He led me to a small, self-contained guest house near the back of the property. It was comfortable, with a kitchen, a bedroom, and a small living area. "This will be your quarters," he stated. "Do not enter the main house unless absolutely necessary. Your primary duty is to observe." That last part, the observe part, stuck with me. It felt less like a job and more like a test. As he rattled off instructions, where the generator was, how to access the water supply, strict rules about not leaving the property, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving something out, something important. Before he left, he turned to me, his icy blue eyes boring into mine. "One last thing," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "There are stories about this place, local legends. Pay them no mind. They are just that, stories." And then he was gone, his black SUV kicking up a plume of dust as it disappeared down the dirt track, leaving me utterly alone in the heart of the Montana wilderness. The first few days were uneventful, almost boring. I settled into a routine. I'd wake with the sun, check the perimeter on the security monitors, do a quick walk around of the immediate grounds, then spend the rest of the day reading, listening to music on my old MP3 player, or just staring out at the impenetrable wall of trees. The silence was the hardest part. It was so profound, it became a presence, a living thing. It started on the fourth night. I was in the guest house, trying to read, when I heard it. A faint scratching, like fingernails dragging across wood, coming from the direction of the main house. I froze, my heart thumping against my ribs. It was too soft to be an animal, too rhythmic to be the wind. I told myself it was my imagination, playing tricks on me in the overwhelming quiet. I got up, walked over to the monitor in my living room, and scrolled through the camera feeds. Nothing. The infrared cameras showed only the swaying branches of trees, the occasional deer grazing in the distance. The scratching continued, a little louder now, more insistent. It sounded like it was coming from the side of the main house, near one of the large, unlit windows. I grabbed a flashlight, my old hunting knife tucked into my belt, and stepped outside. The night was cold and utterly black, the moon obscured by thick clouds. The silence of the forest was absolute, broken only by the frantic pounding of my own blood in my ears. As I approached the main house, the scratching grew clearer, more distinct. It wasn't fingernails. It was something heavier, something with more force. I shone my flashlight on the window. Nothing. No claw marks, no disturbed dust. The scratching stopped abruptly. I stood there for a long moment, listening, my breath held captive in my chest. Then, a low, guttural moan echoed from within the house. It wasn't human. It was something deep, ancient, and filled with an unbearable sorrow. I bolted back to the guest house, slamming and locking the door behind me. I spent the rest of the night hunched over the monitors, my eyes darting from screen to screen, convinced that whatever was in that house was watching me, waiting. But there was nothing, just the static, silent images of the night. The incidents escalated. Each night brought something new, something more unsettling. The whispers began on the seventh night, faint, breathy whispers, just at the edge of hearing, like secrets being shared in the darkness. They weren't in any language I recognized, just a cacophony of sibilant sounds that seemed to slither through the walls of the guest house, wrapping around me like a cold, invisible mist. I would lie awake, rigid with fear, straining to make sense of them. But they remained just out of reach, always just a whisper away from understanding. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps, pacing back and forth in the upstairs hallway of the main house. Thump, thump, thump. They started around midnight and continued until just before dawn. I watched the upstairs cameras, but they showed nothing. Just empty, dust-filled corridors. Yet the sound was undeniable, vibrating through the very ground beneath me, a relentless rhythm of dread. One evening, I was cooking dinner in the guest house kitchen when I heard a distinct thump from the main house. It sounded like something heavy had fallen. I checked the cameras. Everything seemed normal, but then, On the monitor showing the main living room, I saw it. A single antique rocking chair, which had been stationary for days, was now gently swaying back and forth, its empty seat facing the fireplace. There was no breeze, no open window. It just swayed, slowly, rhythmically, as if someone had just gotten up from it. My blood ran cold. I tried to rationalize it. Old houses settle. Wind can find its way in. But the rocking chair was enclosed, and there wasn't a breath of air. The rational explanations felt flimsy, like a thin sheet attempting to cover a gaping abyss. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Every shadow seemed to stretch. Every creak of the guest house settling sounded like a predatory whisper. I was constantly on edge, jumping at my own reflection, convinced I was being watched. The isolation, once a minor inconvenience, now felt like a suffocating trap. I tried to call Mr. Blackwood on the satellite phone. It just rang and rang, an empty, mocking tone echoing in the quiet room. I left a message, a desperate plea for clarification, for answers. There was no reply. The dreams started. Vivid, terrifying dreams that blurred the line between sleep and waking. I would dream of being in the main house, wandering through its endless darkened corridors, pursued by something unseen. I would hear the whispers, louder now, almost tangible, and the footsteps, closer, faster, and then I would see them. Glimpses, dark, fleeting shapes in the periphery of my vision, just out of focus like distortions in the air. They were tall, gaunt, their forms shifting, their movements unnatural. They never fully materialized, always just a shadow, a suggestion of something monstrous. I would wake up in a cold sweat, screaming, the terror clinging to me like a shroud. One morning, after a particularly gruesome dream, I noticed something new on the security monitors. The camera trained on the master bedroom window, an upper-story window that had always been dark and dusty, showed a faint, flickering light, like a candle or a lantern. My heart pounded. No one was supposed to be in the main house. No one. I grabbed my flashlight and the hunting knife. My hands were shaking, but a perverse curiosity, stronger than my fear, pulled me towards the main house. I had to know. I had to see. I crept through the front door, the old wood groaning under my weight. The air inside was heavy, stale, thick with an almost palpable sense of ancient decay. The whispers were louder now, a frantic chorus that seemed to emanate from the very walls. The footsteps overhead were a furious drumming, a desperate chase. I moved through the living room, past the now violently rocking chair, its rhythmic creaking a macabre soundtrack to my terror. I climbed the grand staircase, each step a protest against the oppressive silence. The flickering light from the master bedroom window grew brighter, painting erratic shadows on the walls. As I reached the top of the stairs, the air grew noticeably colder, a chilling dampness that seeped into my bones. The whispers coalesced, forming disjointed phrases, not in English, not in any language I knew, but undeniably words. Words of suffering, of longing, of a hunger that clawed at the very fabric of my sanity. I pushed open the master bedroom door. The room was vast, dominated by a four-poster bed draped in heavy, dark fabric. And there, by the window, was the source of the light. Not a candle, not a lantern. It was a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, its limbs elongated and twisted at unnatural angles. Its skin was the color of old parchment, drawn taut over a skeletal frame. Its head was disproportionately small, its face A smooth, featureless expanse, save for 2 pits where eyes should have been, from which emanated the faint, flickering light I had seen from the guest house. It was draped in tattered, dark cloth that seemed to melt into the shadows. It was bent over something, its back to me. A soft, wet sound filled the room. The whispers, louder now, seemed to emanate from its very form, a chorus of agony. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move, unable to breathe. My mind screamed at me to run, but my body was locked in a horrifying trance. Then, slowly, agonizingly, it turned its head. It had no eyes, but I felt its gaze, a burning psychic probe that pierced through my very soul. The 2 glowing pits deepened, intensified, and I felt a wave of crushing despair wash over me, a loneliness so profound it threatened to consume me. And then I saw what it was holding. A doll, a meticulously crafted antique porcelain doll, its painted eyes wide and fixed, its tiny dress pristine. But it was not just holding it. It was cradling it, stroking its hair, murmuring those unspeakable whispers to it. And as I watched, the delicate porcelain cracked, fissures spreading across its face like a spider web, and a dark, viscous liquid began to seep from its painted eyes, like tears of black oil. The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. The whispers became a chorus of screams, not human, but something far more ancient, far more terrifying. The creature straightened, its unnatural height filling the room, its glowing pits fixing on me. It took a step towards me, then another, its movements jerky, disjointed like a broken marionette. I felt an invisible hand close around my throat, squeezing the breath from my lungs. The despair intensified, a palpable weight pressing down on me. I knew, with an icy certainty, that if it reached me, I would cease to be. My consciousness would be absorbed into that vast, empty void, another whisper in its eternal lament. Something snapped inside me, a primal instinct to survive, stronger than any fear. I let out a guttural scream, a sound torn from the deepest part of my being, and stumbled backward, turning and scrambling down the stairs, ignoring the thumping footsteps that now seemed to chase me relentlessly. I burst out of the main house, gasping for air, the cold night wind a shocking relief against my sweat-soaked skin. I didn't stop running until I reached the guest house, my legs burning, my lungs screaming for air. I slammed the door shut, locked it, and collapsed against it, trembling violently. I spent the next few days in a haze of terror. I didn't leave the guest house. I ate sparingly, my stomach churning with nausea. I constantly monitored the security cameras, though I knew with grim certainty that they wouldn't show what truly haunted that place. I saw nothing on the feeds, just the quiet, empty rooms. But I knew it was still there, waiting. I tried the satellite phone again. Still no answer from Mr. Blackwood. The silence from him was as terrifying as the whispers from the house. He knew. He had to have known. He had left me here, a sacrificial lamb, to whatever ancient horror resided in his remote Montana estate. My mind started to fray. The whispers seemed to follow me even in the guest house, infiltrating my thoughts, twisting them into grotesque shapes. I saw shadows where there were none, heard noises that weren't there. The line between reality and nightmare blurred into an indistinguishable, terrifying mess. On the 5th night after my encounter in the master bedroom, the whispers in the guest house intensified. They were no longer just sounds. They were names. My name, whispered in 1,000 fragmented voices, each one laced with an unbearable sadness. Then, The guesthouse door rattled violently. Thump, thump, thump. Not the footsteps from the main house. This was heavier, more deliberate, like something trying to force its way in. I scrambled to the window, peering out into the inky blackness. Nothing. But the rattling continued, growing louder, more insistent. The wood around the doorframe began to splinter. I knew it had followed me. It was here. I grabbed my hunting knife, the only weapon I had, and stood paralyzed in the center of the room, my heart hammering against my ribs, convinced this was the end. Then, a new sound, a low, rhythmic growling coming from outside the guesthouse. It was deep, primal, and filled with a chilling menace. The rattling at the door stopped. The growling continued, punctuated by what sounded like heavy thuds, like something large being thrown against the side of the guesthouse. I crept to the window again, peering through a crack in the blinds. In the faint moonlight that had finally broken through the clouds, I saw it. A pack of wolves. Massive dark shapes, their eyes glowing with an unnatural luminescence in the darkness. They were circling the guesthouse, their hackles raised, their growls a continuous, terrifying chorus. And then I saw the other thing. Another figure, almost as tall and gaunt as the one in the main house, but different. This one was covered in patches of rough, dark fur, its limbs even more twisted. Its head was like a distorted wolf's, with elongated snout and sharp, gleaming teeth. It was wrestling with one of the wolves, its impossible strength throwing the animal against a tree with a sickening crack. It was a battle, a monstrous, silent battle unfolding just outside my window, two horrors locked in a primal struggle. The wolves were defending the guesthouse, defending me. They were acting as a barrier, a shield against the thing from the main house. I watched, mesmerized and horrified, as the struggle continued. The creature from the house, its form shifting and blurring in the darkness, fought with a desperate ferocity. The wolves, though powerful, were being overwhelmed. One by one, they fell silent, their forms dissolving into the shadows. Finally, only one wolf remained. A massive black alpha, its fur matted with blood, its growl a defiant roar. It launched itself at the creature, a blur of teeth and claws. There was a sickening shriek, and then silence. I waited, my breath held captive in my chest. The moon dipped behind a cloud, plunging the clearing into absolute darkness. I heard no more sounds. When the first rays of dawn touched the horizon, painting the sky in sickly shades of grey and bruised purple, I slowly, cautiously, pushed open the guesthouse door. The clearing was silent. The air was cold and still. There was no sign of the wolves, no sign of the creature, just the faint, unsettling smell of damp earth and something else, something metallic and rotten that hung heavy in the air. But there was something else. Scrawled on the guesthouse door, in what looked like dried black blood, was a single symbol, a jagged, ancient-looking symbol that seemed to writhe even as I stared at it. It wasn't familiar, yet it filled me with a deep, primal dread. It felt like a mark, a claim. I packed my truck in a frantic haze. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about Mr. Blackwood. I just needed to get out. My hands shook so badly I could barely turn the key in the ignition. The drive out was even more terrifying than the drive in. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking menace. Every creak of the truck's suspension sounded like a pursuing footstep. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. I was convinced that if I did, I would see it. Gaunt and silent, sitting in the back seat, its glowing pits fixed on me. I drove for hours, not stopping until I hit the first paved road, until my phone miraculously flickered to life, showing a weak signal. I pulled over, my body shaking uncontrollably. I was free, I was alive, but I was not whole. I never contacted Mr. Blackwood. I never gave notice. I just left, and I never looked back. But the silence of that Montana estate, the whispers, the thumping footsteps, the raw, ancient terror of the things that resided there, they followed me. They are with me now, in the quiet moments of the night, when the world is still and dark. I see them in the shadows, hear them in the rustle of leaves, feel their cold, hungry gaze upon me. I tried to tell people, my friends, my family. They listened with polite disbelief, their eyes filled with pity. They told me I was stressed, that the isolation had gotten to me. They didn't understand, how could they? They hadn't seen what I had seen. They hadn't felt the touch of pure despair. I know, with a chilling certainty, that the thing from the main house is still there, patiently waiting in the dark heart of the Flathead National Forest. And the other one, the one with the wolf's head, the one that fought to keep me safe. I don't know what it was. A guardian? Another horror? A desperate attempt at balance in a place of pure evil. Sometimes, when the moon is full and the night is particularly quiet, I still hear the whispers. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear a distant howl carried on the wind, a mournful, echoing sound that chills me to the bone. It's a reminder, a promise, and I know deep in my soul that I will never truly be free of the Montana estate. It's a part of me now, etched into my very being, a permanent scar from what I saw, what I heard, and what I felt in that place. And I pray with every fiber of my being that no one else ever answers an ad for a caretaker in that remote corner of Montana. Because some places are best left undisturbed, their secrets buried deep beneath the earth, their horrors allowed to sleep in the silent, suffocating darkness.